it is on this day, December 21st, 2022, that I am doing my anniversary review of the Belgariad, which I don't have the covers of because I don't own them physically. But the Belgariad by David Jennings is a series that I finished 1 year ago on December 18th, 2021, so pretty close to where we're at now, and I posted reviews of every single book of that series, but never a general review of the whole series. And that's what this video will be. It's a review of the whole series a year later, so it shows how my opinion now has changed since, or from, the opinion I had when I finished the series. Hard cut on everything I just said. I need to make an announcement about this YouTube channel and my lack of posting on it in the last few months. 3 months ago, which is when I posted my last video, I kind of got in a bike crash and I hit my head and I got a concussion, and I was pretty much told by my doctors I wasn't allowed to read books or be on the computer or anything for a week. And then even after that, I had a lot of exams during my concussion, and I really fell behind in school because of it. So even when I kind of recovered from a lot of the effects of the concussion, not everything, but a lot of the effects of it, I still was behind in life and like still dealing with how much it affected my life. And I just was struggling to get the motivation to read again and struggling to remember what happened in the book when I last read it, which is not good. But I've forgotten a lot of parts of the book, and because of that, it's made me put off reading the book even more. And I just, even like a month and a half after the concussion, I was still kind of feeling the effects between like how much school was like, kind of how much I was struggling with school just after the concussion and with my memory before it. So I'm sorry. And after that I got COVID, which also put off my want to read for even longer. So the semester just ended, and I'm not actually that happy this semester. I'm dealing with a lot of other external things outside of school and the medical stuff I've been going through. And because of all of this, I've been struggling even with like basic stuff. So I just want to say to have mercy on me, particularly with this video. This is the first video I've done in a long time that I've had to like organize, and I've had to read, and I've had to like talk to a camera for real. And because of that, it's been a while. Parts of me have changed. I haven't really figured that out yet. My speech has changed. I'm not that good with my grammar now, so if my sentence doesn't make sense, I'm sorry. But these are just some of the effects I've been noticing since I've hit my head. So bear with me through this video, please. It's not going to be the most organized. It's not going to be the best. Not that they've always been organized, but bear with me. Thank you. Hard cut on the announcement. I do plan to do more videos and get back into this. I'm going to have to do it at my own pace, however, so give me time. About the pacing, preparing for this video, I mostly just speed rewatched my old reviews, and I like speed reread parts of each of these books, except for Castle of Wizardry. But for the Belgariad, I put it on like 1.5 speed, and I kind of just jumped around between the books. Scenes I liked, scenes I didn't like pretty much I was just jumping like every 20 minutes and listening for like 5 to 10 minutes kind of thing, except for Castle of Wizardry, the 4th book, because I was kind of running out of time, and I wanted to get this video done sooner rather than later. But pretty much, I was jumping through the books to kind of compare a lot of the notes I had in my videos versus the notes I have now, listening to some of the scenes, and I have a list of notes. They're not neat, so we're going to be jumping around a lot in this video. I'm going to try to list it as pros and then cons and then my summary, but we may not follow that pattern because brain. So, most of these are non-spoilers. I don't think there will be spoilers in this video, so I may mention some character names if you don't know the character names. I'm pretty sure that's fine. I think there's only one time that I'll say something that's like flat out like, oh, this happens. And even then I wouldn't say it's a spoiler. It's more me giving a warning to people where when you hear that name, you will know what scene I'm talking about when you hear it. But other than that, everything has no spoilers. So from here, we'll just dive right in with all of my comments about the series, what I remember about it, and what I said before that still aligns or doesn't align with my opinion now. Non-spoilers. My first comment that I wanted to say, this is a pro, is that this is kind of a kid's story. Maybe it doesn't sound like a pro, but I think, how to describe this? Something about this series invokes nostalgia in me in a way that no other series I've read has done. It's kind of fascinating because the series isn't reminding me of something else I've read. It's causing its own nostalgia in its own way. One of the observations I made in one of my old videos about this series was that it kind of evokes your like childhood memories of like characters you clung to as a kid, like Mary Poppins and Gandalf and those kind of characters. I feel like some of the characters in this series line up so much with those like this characters you loved as a kid and like kind of looked up to, or maybe we didn't all look up to Gandalf per se, but like those characters that like we like held close to our hearts as kids. I think I see so much of those characters in this series, and there's the Destiny plotline feels kind of like a fairy tale kind of telling that it just evokes nostalgia in me. I think another way I wanted to say it in this video, even though I didn't describe it this way in the past, it feels kind of like with the narrator, with the audiobook, which I'll mention in a minute, it feels kind of like how Princess Bride is told. Wow, my grammar's terrible. So in Princess Bride, like there's like the grandfather who's reading the story to the kid in the bed, and his narration is kind of what brings a lot of the story to life, plus the actual story itself. And it's just that dynamic that just makes it like such a fantastic freaking book, and it's great, and movie is great, fantastic. I feel I get that vibe when I'm listening to the Belgariad. It's like the narrator himself, which is third person, and with the audiobook narrator, he has the accents, he has the voice, he has the narration style, he has everything that makes it feel like a high fantasy foreign world narrator. And it just puts me in the bed as the kid, and I feel like I'm just being read this story over and over again, like read each page. And because of that, I think that's what evokes a lot more of the nostalgia outside of the characters and just the associations we have with our childhood. So I think part of what I love so much about the series a year later, and what I still am remembering the most, is just how enjoyable it was from like a fun point of view. And that wasn't really the way I wanted to explain that, but while a lot of my other series are very serious, they have people dying, they have like a lot of serious elements going on, this series was also serious, but I think a lot of what I took away was like the happy, like childhoody feelings I got from it, and just a lot of the fun moments, a lot of the banter, a lot of the characters interacting with each other, which we'll talk more about all these things, and the nostalgia that is caused by all these different aspects, the way the story is told, the fact that it's a Destiny story and a Journey story. All those things come together, and really that's the big takeaway I have from this series. So I want to mention that first. The very second thing I want to mention is my absolute favorite thing about the series in terms of like all the different writer tools. The characters. I have said many times in many of my other videos that characters are one of the easiest ways to my heart as a reader, and I fucking love curse word, sorry. I love the characters in Belgariad so much. Not all of them were my favorite at first, and when I met some of the characters, I was maybe a little bit more put off from them, from compared to other characters. However, by the very end of the series, everyone in the main crew I loved, except Sinedra. But we're not surprised because I don't like princesses, so it's gonna happen. Now, quick correction, I said hate in one of my videos for Sinedra. Hate is a little strong. Usually when I hate a character, I mean I like hate a character. I don't hate Sinedra, I just don't like her because I can't like princesses, and that's just how I am. I'm sorry. Set that aside. I love all the characters a lot. Even the characters that never really got the main spotlight, like got spotlighted at all in the early books, still, like, they can grow on me so fast with the way all these nuggets are given about their personality and how they are growing, and everything about the pacing that the author gives with the character information and like their journey along with like everybody else. It just really hooked me to them as individuals, and that's the thing that I reflect on the most of this series, is just how much I love these characters and how much I miss them. My main drive to wanting to reread this series is to see those characters again because I love them so much. Specifically, Mr. Wolf, Aunt Pole, Garion, Dernick, Silk. Honestly, I miss Silk. Like, he really grew on me. Maybe he doesn't have the best meeting scene, but all of them really grew on me. And again, the author's just fantastic at showing you how they all grew on this journey together and how all their interactions with each other kind of changed them and just became lovable people. And they bring a lot of the comedy, and this goes to my next plus point. One second, I need a drink. These characters have so much banter. They have so much wit. They have sass. I know sass is the wrong word, but that's the word I always use to describe Aunt Pole. She just has this personality to her that invokes associations with other characters. I think earlier I mentioned Mary Poppins. Like, Mary Poppins, Gandalf, you get those vibes from the characters, and it's hard to not just like cling to those kinds of interactions because it's just so lovable and it's just so fun. Even when scenes are serious and it's not actually like supposed to be like really, really funny, the author still has a way to have a comedic turn to it or have a fun turn to it that you're just having a blast watching these characters just talk to each other seriously. And I don't know how else to convey it without just giving quotes, but that's again another one of the big things to take away, is that this series was fun, it was a blast, and those are the moments I remember. I love the characters so much. Very fun though. Another one of the things I want to mention about the author's tools is dramatic irony. I will say that while a lot of this series is like fun and comedic and enjoyable and it's all about the characters, there is also a whole other thing I love about it, which is the mystery aspect and the dramatic irony aspect. The author was really good at using the fact that it's a destiny story with a prophecy and kind of giving you a lot of the hints right at the beginning, but tricking you by using the fact that you know something to tease you about other things, and B, using the fact that you know something but the characters don't know something to tease you and kind of make you frustrated, but also like really lure you along with the story. He was great at that. He was great at the pacing of that. He gave you the nuggets at just the perfect time a lot of the time. Right when like something's slowing down, you start to learn like something new, and that new information really drags you along. And every kind of new nugget allows the characters to grow and learn, and it opens new paths for the characters to talk to each other. So he really used that aspect of the plot to amplify his characters, which I think is part of why I love them so much, is that the plot really amplifies them. It allows them to grow. It allows them to have interactions that, if it weren't for that, then you wouldn't have that kind of enjoyable interaction, whatever that interaction is, serious or not. So really, there's just really good pacing with everything that has to do with that. We're doing all pros first, right? Do I have any other pros? Alright, my last pro is that this is a series with a lot of world building. Now, this will lead into a con, but outright, I will say that I respect that the author has world building and hints and those dramatic irony nuggets till the end. He drags it out. All the way through the last book, you are still learning new information about the characters, about the world, about the people, about what is happening. And it amplifies how big the world is. It amplifies how much of a fantasy journey story this is, and I really do appreciate that. There's one con with that though, and this is our first con in the list. There aren't that many, but first con, it's hard to remember it all. And I think that's one of the big things about this series, looking back on it a year later. I have forgotten so much of the individual plot points. The moments that I remember in terms of the plot points are the moments with those character interactions I love. But the moments that don't have those character interactions, or those moments that he's explaining a block of the world building, it's so easy to just completely forget that. The whole chunk just fades away in your memory because there's so much of it. Every single book, you're learning all this new information. There's all these new people, all these new nationalities, all these new little tiny details, and it's hard to retain that much information, especially when so much of the information is hard to pronounce. It makes it harder to remember, in my opinion. I will say, listening to the audiobook helped me for that. So, another reason why to maybe listen to the audiobook, if you listen to the series, it helps you with your memory a little bit. But it is very easy to forget a lot of the information the author gives you in this series. Another con, which is kind of along the same lines but not, this has a journey story. Journey stories have a lot of that world building, and they also have a lot of those in-between travel sections. A lot of those in-between travel sections, while they do have some of the comedy, are harder to especially if they have a lot of those world building comments, and harder to remember, and harder to feel the momentum while you're reading, if that makes sense. I feel once you start to hit the first few of those little tiny dips where you're traveling between these two destinations, or there's some plot in between destinations, I think first few times, very enjoyable, can be done. But when you're doing that multiple books in a row a lot, I think there are certain ones where they're just going to cause the reader to lose momentum. It's not necessarily a terrible thing. I'm sure most books do that. I think it's just part of writing. But when I was doing my reread, there were some sections that if I were to do a proper reread where it's rereading everything, I don't think I could sit through the whole section. I think I'd just have to give in to skipping it. And so that's just something I want to comment on this kind of story, is that some things repeat, and some things you just lose momentum because it has so much of that world building and not what you're attached to in the series. So I think that happens sometimes. Doesn't necessarily mean everything's bad. Along the same lines, I mentioned earlier that this is a kid's story. It is YA, period. It is YA. And because of that, some things are a little cliche. The ending's kind of cliche and cringy. But in terms of how the prophecy resolves, maybe it's not as satisfying to those who have read a lot more complex endings before. And going back and rereading the ending, I still agree that I love it. I still agree that it has elements of what I love about this series, but also with how I've read other series, I feel like it doesn't hold a flame against other things I've read in terms of its ending. It feels cliche by comparison. And so that's just another thing I want to say. This isn't a series that I weigh its plot in those end serious moments as much, because I've read other things. But the characters and the comedy and those things I've mentioned are the things that I love a lot about the series. Okay, what else? This is a tiny picky thing. I always have like one tiny picky thing in like every single review I have. I'm sorry. Tiny picky thing. I think in book 3, the point of view pattern changes in the middle of the series, and it threw me off those first few chapters, and I actually like really slowed down. And that happened again in my read through. Like it just throws me off each time there's a point of view change in the middle of a series. And I think it's kind of semi-consistent after the 3rd book, but it's kind of weird, and I just want to warn people about that, is that it's not perfectly consistent. You're not always in Garion's perspective. You're not in his perspective either. You're following Garion, but you're not always following Garion. And so that's just something I wanted to mention as like a con. It's not really a con. It's just a picky thing that can throw you off. And I still feel that way. Like, that's still one of the things I remember a year later about the book, was that threw me off. Said that. Said that. Said that. Said that. Said that. Said that. The intensity goes up with each book. That's a pro. Sorry, I missed this one earlier. The intensity goes up with each book, and even if it has that journey element and those cliche moments and everything, you still, and even though it's a kid's story and you're pretty sure that no one is seriously going to die, you still feel the suspense at certain moments. And as the intensity goes up with each book, you kind of feel the emotions weighing on Garion more and more and more. I think that's another one of those things that highlights the characters, is you see how the stress of the intensity is affecting them. So I do love that. Fantastic. And I think that leaves only one more comment, which is a con. Yeah, one more comment that's a con is just that a year later, I still remember disliking the whole Salmi's sequence. Like, I didn't let go of that. I didn't forget that I didn't like that. Like, I still clearly remember what happened there, and I clearly remember that I'm never going to reread that again. Maybe it's a little bit dramatic. It wasn't that terrible compared to other things I've read, but it's still not a sequence of scenes that I want to reread. Even though it has some of that mystery, it has some of those reveals on the prophecy, and it has the voice showing up. I'm not going to elaborate what the voice is, but the voice shows up and stuff like that. Even with all that, I don't weigh the worth of rereading that bit as more than the cost of rereading that bit. So 1 year later, I actively remember that sequence and how much I don't like that sequence. But aside from that sequence, I don't remember any other scene that I outright disliked. That's the only one. So if you ever read that scene and you agree or disagree, feel free to comment on that. But personally, no. I think I don't like it. I really don't. And that's the one negative thing I actively remember, is that I am flat out against that scene. I have friends that have another scene that they are like actively negative towards. I'm not going to elaborate which scene because apparently I have an off opinion about it, but I personally am fine with it, because I guess I'm weird. But that scene, fine, because it has to do with the prophecy, and I'm fine with that. But Salmi's sequence, I am not with. I believe that's everything I have to say about the Belgariad. In summary, I think it's like a fun story. It's a story that, while it has its serious bits and it has the mystery and it has the plot journey, I think if you're going to read it, you probably want to get attached to the characters. Otherwise, if you don't get attached to the characters and you can't really build on that, you might get like a completely different outtake of this series than I did. That can be a good thing or a bad thing. It depends on whether or not you like a series written the way it is. But for me, the characters is what carried the series for me. The characters and the things that come from the characters. So their growth, the comedy, the banter, everything. All of it is great. the reveals, the dramatic irony which comes from characters, all of those things. Fantastic to me, and I just remember a lot of the fun moments, except for Selma Yusra. But otherwise, I remember the fun moments. It's worth reading, I think, but maybe a little bit lower on your to-read list than other series. This is a series that you would take your time with, I think. With all that said, we get to what's new and what's next. I actually kept it 25 minutes. Oh my god, yay! Okay, what's new and what's next? In order, going back to the announcement at the beginning of the video, I stopped in the middle of this book, and I haven't yet decided exactly what my course of action will be to continue this book. I think I'm going to continue from where I'm at, and when it comes time, when I finish the book and it comes time to record a video on the book, I'm going to reread some of the beginning. Particularly, I'm going to go to bits that I don't remember and reread those bits, and try my best to remember as much of the book as I can. I don't think it's worth restarting from the beginning, exactly, because I still remember a lot of the key bits. I just don't remember all the, like, new perspectives. One of the things about this book is that this is the first book that broke its, like, point of view pattern, and that's really thrown me off, and I'm kind of sad about the timing of me hitting this book at the time I did. It's thrown me off, and a lot of those perspectives where we only see them once are the people I don't remember. So, more comments about that when we hit the review of this book, but I think the review of this book is going to be very different from my past reviews. I think I'm going to be more shaky and critical towards it, just because of the events around my reading this book. It's not really the book's fault, it's just the timing. It's unfortunate. We'll see when I read this. I have to take it at my own pace, though. And then, what I am beyond hyped to read, and hopefully this will reawaken my, like, love of reading, I get to reread Powder Mage by Brian McClellan, which I am so beyond hyped to reread. Like, I can't even begin to explain. I've wanted to reread this series since I finished it, way back in, January, early January this year. So in a few weeks, we have an anniversary review of this series where I finally get to reread them. I've already started, but I finally get to, like, fully reread them and comment on how much I still hold this series in high regard, which I do hold this series in high regard. I really am excited to continue into the sequels, which I kept calling them prequels in my old reviews because I'm dumb. Sequels, and keep reading novellas. I've actually read some of the novellas of this series since. Don't do book reviews of novellas since they're so short, but I have read some of these novellas, and they're also fantastic and make me very excited to reread the series. So hopefully I might be able to do, like, a lot of these, like, reread a significant portion of these before it's officially the anniversary date that I need to record the video for them. But I am beyond hyped. I love this world. I want to return to it. I want to return to characters too. Oh, I love them so much. I really do. I'm so excited. So yeah, I pretty much just gave the answer on what I think of this series, but I'm so excited. I'm so excited! Okay. With that said, in terms of, like, what's new, I don't own any new books. I need to buy book 7 of The Expanse. I don't actually know the name of book 7, but I need to buy book 7 of The Expanse, so that will be soon. And my first of the Year of Sanderson books arrive in a month or two. They seem to imply that there's a delay. I don't know if the delay is late January or, like, into February, but there seems to be a delay with production for the first book. So we'll figure out when we get the first book. And we also need to figure out if I'm allowed to read the first book when I get it, or if I need to read another Sanderson book before I can read it. So I'm going to be asking friends about that. But those books will be arriving soon, relatively soon. And I am very excited to get them, because that was a big money investment. I probably should not have spent that much money on those books, but we'll have them soon. That is all I had for today. I hope you have a good winter, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.